Well, hi, buddy. It's John Elzinga with It's a Great Day to Serve the Lord. Welcome back. And today our devotional centers around the concept or the question or the feeling, really, of when you feel hemmed in, when you feel cornered, when you feel surrounded, when you feel backed up against the wall. You see, there's circumstances in our life when we feel like we're surrounded by obstacles or enemies, surrounded by problems and trials, surrounded by complications and health issues and financial issues and relational issues and marriage issues, and it just goes on and on and on, and there's so many issues, and you begin to feel hemmed in and backed up against the wall, and you can't even breathe. Maybe you feel like people don't like you, or they don't recognize you, they ignore you, or maybe you feel like they're simply against you because you're a believer in Jesus Christ. Maybe you just feel like, I can't catch a break. Nothing I'm doing is working. Maybe you screwed up. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you lost your stuff. And people just seem to be against you, and you feel like they're looking at you like you're some kind of a loser. They're mocking you, and they're even taunting you. They might say things like, or you think they are, yeah, you say you trust in God. Well, how's that working out for you? Or maybe they're just cold-hearted. You made your bed, now sleep in it. David had issues like this. In Psalm chapter 3, verses 1 to 6, we see a situation where David is surrounded by enemies, and literally, and they are headed by his son Absalom, who really wants to do harm to him. And he's running from them. And David's crying out to the Lord. He says, "Oh Lord," in verse 1, "I have so many enemies against me." So many saying, God will never rescue him. That's the taunting part. He's thinking they're saying, or maybe they are saying, this guy's beyond hope. This guy's beyond help. This guy's worthless. And those who give up on you might say this or think this. Or those who don't believe in God might use your troubles and trials to say, so you're a Christian, huh? Where's your God in all of this? If this is how your God shows he cares for you, I don't want anything to do with it. But David was a man of faith, a strong believer of God and his sovereignty. And sovereignty is simply a word that means that David knew that God is in control, that God is above all of this. Isn't it a surprise to God? He knew that in the midst of his trouble and sorrow, in the midst of his trials, God was still there. And he turned to God, not just to answer his prayer, but to lift his spirits and to shore up his confidence. He turns to God. And to get him out of his depression and to get him out of his feelings of helplessness, he turns to God. In verse 3 says, "But you, O Lord, are a shield around me. You are my glory, the one who holds my head high." I think, friends, we all know when we're down, when we're in the pit, when we're depressed, when we're anxious, our body posture shows that. And our head kind of droops, and we're kind of hunched over, and we're kind of in this posture of helplessness and depression and angst. And he's saying, God lifts my head. To hold his head as high is to have his confidence renewed. It is to bring a sense of joy and peace that makes no sense. It is that peace that passes understanding that the Bible talks about it. And that comes in the midst of praise and prayer. In praise and worship, we hold our head high. We are focused on God. We look toward God. And some of us may even raise our hands high. And when we do raise our hands, that is a whole posture of reaching for God, of trusting God, of loving God, of praising God. It is to exalt him. Verse 4, he says, "I cried out to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy mountain." To cry out to the Lord is simply shows a person in prayer, a prayer of desperation, a real prayer. It's not a frothy prayer. It is not God speak filled with holy language. It's real language. It's about what you're really feeling, what you're really sensing, what you're really experiencing. And yes, we can cry out to God. Yes, we can appeal to him. Yes, you can show him your true feelings, your true sense of desperation. Many of you know I live here in a small 800 square foot condo with my wife. And, people on each side of us. And it's okay. We like it here. We're here close to our children and our grandchildren. But, it's tight. And there are times when I'm in a time of prayer. So I don't bother my wife. I simply literally go in the bathroom. I get on my knees by the toilet and I cry out to God in desperation for whatever the issue might be. I may cry out to him for help for me and my wife. I may cry out to him for help for somebody I love. I may cry out to him for asking God to break through into their life and into their heart, to make them alive in Christ. I cry in desperation, oh God, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. It doesn't seem like it's going to work. It doesn't seem like His care. I feel surrounded. And I cry out to God in that way. Answering God from His holy mountain is simply language that gives us a picture that God is above us, that God is above it all, that God has the big picture. He has the big perspective. He knows what's going on, and in fact, He's in control. And the answer, my friend, might simply be to trust Him, knowing that God is at work in your life. And when we do, this brings us to a place of peace and a place of restfulness, even in the midst of our trials. Verse 5, David says, I lay down and slept, yet I woke up in safety, for the Lord was watching over me. Yes, I feel surrounded, but when I put my trust in Him, knowing He's in control, I lie down in safety, because He's watching me, and so He can sleep. I've mentioned before, I'm an anxious guy, and I don't sleep well in the middle of the night now. If I wake up, I'm wide awake, and I'm starting to think about stuff and worry about stuff, and then I just simply go to praise and prayer in my mind, in my head. I'm praising God and I'm praying to Him, and I'm telling Him how I feel, and I know that He's there. I pray a sense of thankfulness because I begin to remember the time He broke through here. Remember what He did there. Remember how He provided then. Remember what He did in this person's life. And ultimately, David's thinking and believing, hey, God is with me. What can they do to me? I may be surrounded, but what can they do to me? Because God's with me. And we're reminded about this by Paul in Romans chapter 8, when Paul says, and I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from the love of God. Nothing. That's like saying, what can they do to me? God's with me. Paul continues, neither death nor life, neither angels or demons, neither our fears for today or our worries for tomorrow, not even the powers of hell can separate us from the love of God. No power in the sky above or in the earth below, indeed nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of God that is revealed in Christ Jesus. Nothing. My friend, whatever you're going through, whatever your circumstances are, whatever your trials are, whatever the stuff is in your life, in the seasons of your life, maybe when you feel backed in, hemmed in, backed up against the corner, surrounded by issues and troubles and problems and people that maybe seem like they're against me. Maybe you feel like in your job or your career that you're surrounded by doubters and unbelievers and antagonists and who mock you and mock God, and you feel surrounded. My friend, remember this. You can cry out to God. It's okay. You can ask Him to intervene. You can seek Him in prayer and praise. And then rest easy. For He is with you. And nothing, nobody, no thing can separate you from the love of God. That's your devotion for today. And friend, if you support this devotional, thank you very much. And if you would like to support it, there's a link below where you can do this. Well, God bless you, and remember, it's a great day to serve the Lord.